Hey everybody, and welcome to the Ed Collab Gathering. We're here at workshop number 16 with Linder and Kelli Sowerbrower, who are talking about Batman is not a superhero, getting students excited about Toulmin's argument. If you'd like to tweet along with us, the hashtag for this session is hashtag the Ed Collab Gathering space hashtag 16. So I'm going to go ahead and hand you over to Linder. Hey, Roz.
Hey, how are you guys doing? So excited to be here. I am collaborating with Dr. Kelli, as I like to call her, who is a fantastic educator here in Georgia, who has taught me so much about teaching argument. I totally fell in love with all the wonderful things she does. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time introducing myself, but I'm a member of the Ed Collab and the author of the Big Book of Details and the Chart Sim series. So I'm really excited to spend this time with you, and I appreciate you guys being here. And those of you who are going to be here in the future, really excited and happy to learn with you guys today. So I'll throw it over to Kelli to tell you a little bit about what we're doing and a little bit about herself. Hey, Kelli.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelli. Thanks so much, Roz, for including me on this presentation. I'm so excited. I love talking about Batman and argument, and don't we all love to argue a little bit? So I want to tell you, first of all, thanks again. I'm Kelli Sowerbrower. That whole doctor thing freaks me out. It's still kind of new to me, and I'm not quite used to the Dr. Kelli part, but I'm trying to get there. So really how this whole Batman Superman thing came about is I was talking to a coach one day, and he was like, don't call me coach, whatever, call me Batman. And I was like, why would you want to be Batman? He's not even a superhero. And he was mortified that I would say that. So then I got to thinking, wait a minute, isn't this just known? So I went into classes the next day, and I asked my classes, hey, let's talk about this Batman Superman thing. And literally the kids went crazy. Like I had one kid angry, and I was like, is this real life? And so it was just kind of, it just took over, and then it went to lunch. I brought it to the teachers. At one point, we had a superhero day during homecoming week, and it was a huge issue between some of the teachers, Batman and Superman, and it got to just be the school-wide event. By the way, I teach at a high school, so the fact that this is a high school school-wide event was pretty exciting. But then we just kept talking with the teachers, and if kids are this invested in Batman, then we can absolutely be doing the argument with this. Loving the cup there, Dr. Roz.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I am all superhero up today. I think we have to acknowledge that. We have on our respective t-shirts. Kelli is obviously on Team Superman, and I've obviously adopted Team Batman. And Kelli, I have to tell this story. When I first heard Kelli talk about this, my husband was texting me, and he could hear the conversation. And I don't know if you remember this, Kelli, but we were talking about arguing whether or not he was a superhero. And my husband was so intent that he was a superhero, he began participating via the phone. So I had to give his argument, and we went into a lot of the pieces. So this is something that's really exciting for me too. Really excited to even talk about this. People get excited, and that's what we want our kids to do, to be excited.
Right. And just the fact that people get so crazy over Batman and Superman, and you're like, what? And it was just fun. And honestly, I don't really care, except for the fact that I love to see kids get passionate. And then when we take it to the Toulmin's argument, it's so nice that you can then move it to the next thing. And then the reason why we're starting talking about argument is that in this world that we all live in of standards, we have moved at the high school, I think at all levels, we've moved from persuasive arguments to an argument. So students at one point were taught to be writing persuasively. Now we are taught to be writing arguments. And I think the big difference between persuasive and arguments is that persuasion is really emotional, and it uses a lot of opinions. And I remember being at, like, I don't know if you guys remember, like the standardized test pep rallies that you would have at most schools that we had at the high school. Our principal really would get up and say, hey, if you don't know a statistic, just make one up. And we were like, what? Okay, everybody make up statistics. Where
we taught that in elementary too. I have to interrupt you there. We taught that in elementary. I told my fifth graders, make up a fact to convince your reader when you're writing a persuasive piece. And I think we're all guilty of that.
And so I kind of, when we talking about the standards, thankfully the standards recognize that you can't just make up facts. So now we've really moved into the world of arguments. And in arguments is where they have to use facts. They have to find data. They have to find evidence to support their claims and their warrants. And so this has really helped us moving from persuading to arguing. And then as we look at the Common Core standards, they were called Common Core, whatever part of the country you live in. I know that Georgia, where I'm from, is from Georgia. They're no longer called the Common Core. They're called Georgia State something, something, something. But really, they're still the Common Cores. They've added an and they might have changed a punctuation mark. I have to thank Carol Jago for pointing those out to us. But if you really compare your original Common Core that was the national level to whatever it is that your state has made, the words are pretty much identical. They've just added some conjunctions and changed some punctuation. But the fact that Common Core has included the word arguments and talks about claim and evidence, and then if you go back to, because I've been started doing a little bit more research on persuasion versus the argument, Appendix A actually talks about and differentiates the credibility, or differentiates between persuasive and argument. And I thought it was really interesting that Common Core does say, as I've got it written up there on the screen, students should write arguments to support claims, which is using Senator Toulmin's vocabulary. And then in page 24, the appendix, I'm going to just read a little brief part of it. Persuasion is the credibility of the speaker is very important to the audience. It also appeals to audience's self-interest and the audience emotions. Whereas Appendix A points out that the argument uses claims and proof rather than emotions to prove their points. So just the fact that the standards that every state has now absolutely shown the difference between persuasive and argument. Now we've got to talk about the argument and pull our emotions out a little bit and use data and facts. Roz, talk about a little bit with the elementary. How does that work? You're still on mute. Can you unmute?
Roz, we can't hear you.
Okay, it's very rare.
There we go.
Hear me, so I apologize. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little about elementary because I live in the elementary middle school world pretty much. And a lot of times we focus on opinion writing. And the new standards typically for K through 3, they still focus on opinion writing. So the kids are still giving their opinion, telling what they think about something. But when they get to 4th grade and the upper elementary grades, it shifts, where they ask kids to write arguments. And for a lot of elementary school teachers, this was very daunting because we didn't do this. And so the idea that we suddenly had to was a big shift. So a lot of the teachers were very concerned about making this shift from opinion to argument. And for me, as someone who works primarily with elementary school teachers and middle school teachers, I was kind of perplexed and at a loss because they weren't used to hearing things that you use to build your arguments. So Kelli, who was my high school expert, I kind of had to go to her and say, what are we supposed to be doing? Like, we're trying to prepare these kids for moving forward. What is it that we should be doing so that they are able to write more complex arguments? And we realized we had to change a lot of our language. We had to change a lot of our practices and really just change what we were doing to help kids support not just opinions, but claims. So Kelli's gonna talk a little bit about that and kind of share some of the things that I didn't know because I just didn't know what to do, you know? So Kelli really helped me understand that. You remember that, Kelli?
I gotta do the same thing.
We like to stay on mute apparently. But Kelli, tell about a little bit, what I want you to tell about is a bit of what you taught me when we were talking about what you need to do with argument, like what kind of things actually need to exist, and just kind of the background for what a good argument really looks like as we move from opinion to argument. So you could share a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Right. Well, first I want to introduce the man who we credit the practical argument. And he was an educator, woo woo. And he spent his career trying to analyze moral arguments and trying to come up with a practical, develop a practical argument so that he could effectively evaluate the ethics behind moral arguments, because really moral arguments is what he was involved in. But as he develops what it is we're about to talk about, the claim, evidence, and warrant, it was found that his practical argument really fits into the field of rhetoric. And as I continue to study and get to know Mr. Toulmin a little bit more, via the internet, not that I met the man. But I did find out that I thought a little bit of humor was that he's married 4 times. So the real reason that he was looking for the practical argument probably was not because he was a British philosopher, but because he was trying to argue with his wife. And so we all know that. So
how many times was he married?
4 times.
Oh yeah, he was an expert in arguing.
So he had to master this whole claim, evidence, and warrant. And so he's the one who gets credit for all of this that we have found. We've just broken it down. So if we could, here's basically what he's got, is he breaks it in 4 sections. Roz, if you want to go ahead and push it forward, as cute as he is, let's keep going.
Okay, I'm still on the 4 marriages. Okay.
Okay. So here's basically simple as we can make it. You have got 4 things. We start with a claim, which would be like our thesis statement or a topic sentence. We have evidence, which is our proof, usually textual support in the field of literature, but obviously it could be anything. You have a warrant. This is so important. And I think my students struggle the most with the warrants is that the so what. You can give me a topic sentence and then you can give me evidence, but why does that evidence matter? You've got to make a connection. And then the rebuttal. And the rebuttal's a big thing for me that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. That's kind of scary at the high school level, but we put it in there for those that are a little bit more advanced. And I think other levels do it a little bit easier, but sometimes my students mess it up. But basically,
well, I will say this: watching her show me this, like when she first showed me this, I didn't know what to do with this. So I was like, oh my gosh, I teach 4th graders. What am I going to do? So when you look at this, like these pieces, these 4 parts, these are the foundation. But we really had to look at how can we apply this to all grade levels. So as you're talking, Kelly, this might seem high level for some of our elementary school folks. But when I looked at this, I realized this is what the standards are asking us to actually do. So if you're watching this, you're like, oh no, I can't do this. I'm there for you. I'm going to show you how we took all this great stuff and kind of brought it down to a lower level.
Right. And Roz, I think you're up.
Well, I want to show so basically when Kelly showed me this and we talked about this is what we want kids to do, I didn't know what to do. I was like, this is not at all what we've been doing in elementary school or middle school. So I had to really scaffold a lot. So I'm going to share some of those scaffolds with you. The so what was the big deal. I'm going to go back really quickly. You see Kelly's so what right here where it says a warrant. My kids didn't know what that was. We didn't even call it a warrant in the beginning. I was like, guys, you need a so what? Why do I care? Once you have a claim, why should your reader care that this claim is valid? What does it mean? And so what we did was we went through a lot of good literature and we looked at different things and we made decisions about, okay, I like this, I don't like this. We just kept it very opinion based because that's what they were used to. And we just had them state opinions initially. And then we said, so what? What is the so what of this? And we looked at ways that they could kind of explain that and slowly scaffold into where we knew they would have to be eventually. And we even gave the kids what we call bookmarks. I'm going to show those to you. These are these little bitty tabs. Whenever they had to do argument writing, we wanted them to think in terms of just the first 3. What's your claim? What is the so what? Like, why should we care? And then we moved into what is the counterclaim? And for the counterclaim, it was challenging for kids. And I say this because kids aren't used to doing that. If they are giving their opinion, they know that, hey, I like this. This is what I like. But with argument, we knew that there had to be that other side. So for kids, this is very perplexing. It was also very confusing for our teachers because they weren't used to doing that. Why would you introduce a counterclaim to your students? Why would you introduce another side? We don't do that. And so again, we had to have that mind shift from opinion to argument. So a lot of the tools that we created were scaffolds. We did a lot of anchor charts. We did a lot of exemplars and a lot of modeling so that the kids could see what it looks like. I'm going to show you one of our charts that we use for counterclaims. This seems simple to us as adults, but for elementary and middle school students, this was really helpful. And so a lot of times students would take one of those beginnings and talk about, you know, if you see the green one there, it could be argued that, and they would say, you know, the other side. We called them opposite side statements for a while, but this is where we began with students in terms of just deconstructing the pieces and the components that make up a sound argument. So for younger students, if you're looking at this and you're thinking this might be too complex, it really isn't. They just need enough time and enough scaffolds to kind of hold their hand a little bit, that whole gradual release, you know, give them time to really work with the material, to really have some support, because they're not going to come up with this on their own. But we found that once we provided these scaffolds, oh my gosh, the kids were great with this. They were able to easily move into forming their arguments, doing the so whats, and acknowledging the counterclaims and beginning to develop some of those. So this is where we started. And Kelly, I know you guys went way deeper. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. And I do want to know, before we get to here, we're talking about counterclaims with high schools. I think high school students still counterclaim because they struggle with counter arguments because they get so passionate about their side. So often when we're talking about scaffolding, I scaffold a little bit differently. I scaffold like from a really easy text like the Batman versus Superman to a more difficult text, which we'll talk about in a little bit, like Poe's argument, or when you actually take it into the literature and do those kind of analysis. But with the countering, at the high school level, there are a couple of really easy things that we could do that we did. You either, if you were really passionate about this side, you had to argue the opposite.
Oh, that's good. That's
and then
really
the other thing is that we would partner pairs up. Okay, if you're for this argument and you're against this argument, you had to actually write against one another. And so you can't talk, you just would have to write back and forth. So you're literally having your counter right there in front of you. And so those are both, you know, easy ways, or easier ways, it's still difficult, but easier ways to get your high school students to also keep thinking about countering, so they can still be passionate about what they believe in, but as well as get to the next level. Okay, some real easy things that we did just to scaffold start. My scaffolding, it starts really simple, and then you get to the difficult. So we started really simple with the Batman. Actually, we started even more simple than that. Broke it down like this. First thing we do, of course, I'm going to recognize Chris Lehman in close reading. You're going to look at your text. You're going to have a conversation with your text. You're going to annotate your text. When you finish your reading it the first time, you're going to ask questions about it. Okay, what do you want to know? What things you need to find out? What's missing? Then you're going to go
Kelli,
back.
Can you tell more about that with Batman? Like, because I know this part here is like second nature to you, but the whole examining the data and the questions. Can you tell a little bit about that under the guise of Batman and Superman? Because I think that was the part that got the kids excited, and my husband and all the superhero freaks. But talk a little about that, because that's the part where I feel like when I first heard you talk about this, it was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. You know, like what you guys did with the Batman Superman for those first two things.
We actually found texts to support all of these. And I can kind of jump in here a little bit. Let me do a little sharing. Actually, we have a screen that has, I used Wikipedia. I know Wikipedia is a bad thing, but teachers, I know every one of you have used Wiki because it's an easy answer. Now, we know we teach our kids not to use it for research, but shoot, if I need an easy answer, I'm going to Wiki. So the first thing we did was go to Wiki, looked up superhero. Then we went to the dictionary and we looked up superhero. So we gave those students those two arguments. Then I found some amazing editorials and a blog. So here we go, entire screen, editorial. So here is an editorial, which is great because I could teach editorials or remind the students, okay, this is what an editorial is, da, 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 da. And we found this is Batman Really Superhero. And this was a writer who got in an argument with his brother. And the voice is great. He talks, it's first person, so it's really good. Students can do a close reading with this. You can read it the first time, and students are going to go into Batman versus being a superhero and not a superhero with a preconceived notion. So this kind of helps them. They either find their evidence to support their ideas, or they find evidence that counters their ideas. Either way, it works. And so this was the first one that we'd found, and it's the editorial. And it's just
I love that. I like the idea that you're using a real text, something that matters to them, and you're still using those skills that we're teaching them. Like, I think the engagement level, that's the key piece that gets them engaged. That's awesome.
It's fun. We're still we're reading texts. And the second text I found, which I just thought was hilarious, because this guy really is very funny. Jeffrey Nowak, For the Love of God, Batman is a Superhero. Okay, the title alone, kids are like, okay. So now I've got kids reading. And they're reading and they're underlining and they're circling and they're having conversations with this. And this guy also speaks in first person. Now, I will tell you, this is, I think he says crap, or he might say a cuss word in this reading. And some of the teachers, when we presented this in the past, went, whoa, I don't know if I can do this in my class. But at the upper level, students are all about this. And this is definitive that he is a hero, and he presents his argument. And as we talked about Toulmin's argument, not only are kids learning how to write the argument, but they're also learning, I'm coming back, they're also learning how to recognize solid arguments. So as we are having a close reading with this editorial and Mr. Novak's thing, we are also determining whether these are legitimate. You know, do they have a claim? Do they have their evidence? Do they make their warrants? And so some of the steps that we went through with this is we looked at the data, we asked questions, we go back to the data. So we're going to look at it a second time. Then we're going to answer the questions that were asked. Okay, there's your evidence. And then we're going to write the answer to our questions, claim, using their evidence and warrants. And again, we have to keep saying, go back to our kids, okay, you have to do the so what? Why does that evidence matter? So if we look, just putting this into super basic practice, at the most basic level, claim, I need a rain jacket. Evidence, it's raining outside. Warrant, rain jackets are waterproof. Okay, so when I have my evidence, it's raining outside, and my claim was I need a rain jacket. So what if it's raining outside? What is that rain jacket going to do? Your warrant on the simplest level is that rain jackets are waterproof. My counter argument, we're going to throw it in there, unless the rain jacket does not match my outfit. I'm a little bit vain. I have some issues with that. So then we're going to put it all together. And at the simplest form, we started everything with a sentence. So because it is raining outside, I need to get my rain jacket because it is waterproof. Unless, of course, the rain jacket does not match my shoes, then I need an umbrella. And so this was super simple, and kids could get it because we've got really simple sentences. Now, because we're teachers, I didn't want to put this in writing. So here's mine. Personal one is, I need a glass of wine, is my claim. My evidence is because I'm a teacher. And my warrant is because a glass of wine helps me reflect on a day with different eyes, with a different lens. My counter would be, unless I've had a terrible day and then I need a glass of margarita. So you can put this at all levels, and it doesn't just have to be about Batman, but the idea is that it's just fun. And it's claim, evidence, and warrant just using sentences. And so as we did that, then I needed to kick it up a notch. Okay, now we've got sentences. Now how can I evaluate those sentences pretty rapidly? So Roz, if we could go and show, actually, no, wait a minute. No, I got this.
Okay,
so
go ahead.
The basics. So what we did with the Batman, so we took our Wikipedia thing about superhero. They had their definition of superhero from, I believe it was dictionary.com that we found it. And then we had the editorial, and then we had the blog.
I actually have that for you here. And
okay.
You already referenced it a little bit earlier, but I'll just show it.
Thanks. Okay, so here's our wiki. Here's our dictionary.com. So show them these, then we show them the editorial, and then we show them the other article that we found. Now, I needed a quick way for me to evaluate whether they were able to do this. So my campus, or our county, is digital. I believe digital is a language now that's everywhere, and almost everybody's going one-to-one. If not, you've got ways to get it, or 90% of them have cell phones, or whatever the percentage is. So I found this thing called Polls Everywhere. And don't get me wrong, I don't work harder than the students. I literally Googled, how can I text in this answer? So I do want to share with you what I found. It was absolutely ingenious. And here we go. So I found this. It's called polleverywhere.com. Teachers, it's free. Whoa! Kids, take out your cell phones. You can text in. So literally, I asked the question, is Batman a superhero? Share your sentence. So in one sentence, they had to text in their answers. Okay, first of all, Batman sucks. That was me practicing. A student did not write that. So they had to text in their claim, evidence, and warrant in one sentence. And literally, it pulls up live. And then I could show the class, and it's anonymous, which we all love because they don't want to own their own work often. So I could talk about, okay, this one here, Batman is not a superhero because he is lacking any superhuman qualities. Here's my claim. Here's my evidence to give him an edge that implies that he deserves the super title. And then we have it stopped, which I don't know if they hit enter on accident, but we don't have a warrant. Batman is not a superhero. He qualifies a hero. Okay, we're lacking something here. So immediately I was able to give the class feedback. And what else I really liked about this was that not only could I give the feedback, but then we could also talk about sentences. Whoa! So I could say, okay, Batman is not a superhero. That's great. We have a simple sentence. If you need a comma right here, I'm going to talk about independent clauses and compound sentences and conjunctions. So I would say, hey, he does not have superhuman abilities, comma, so he does not qualify as a superhero. I've got a great evidence. I've got some warrants. We just missing a comma. So I was able to do multiple lessons here, not just claim, evidence, and warrant, but I was also able to talk about sentences. And, sometimes we laughed at ourselves. We had a little bit of fun. Students enjoyed it, and they could see their stuff right up there. And then the fact that they were anonymous was nice because I wasn't picking on anyone specifically. But you can kind of see, and again, this was free. It was so easy. I literally did, I gave them a text phone number. They had to text in this thing. I think this was one of my codes. I don't even remember. But it was just a super easy, and it was done. I could do the whole activity. This part of the activity might have taken 15, 20 minutes by the time we talked about all the different sentences and what we found and what we didn't found. And then it got the students having a great conversation about Batman, Superman, claim, evidence, and warrants, what was missing, and those kind of things. And I was using digital, so if I'm being evaluated at any point, I've also included the digital part of all of this, which the kids also loved. What do you think, Roz?
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I think, and I don't know what it is about technology, but the fact that kids can touch something and use something that they're used to, something they use in their social life, they just get excited. Now, for elementary, we don't have that same excitement because they don't have cell phones. But whenever I think they can use something they use in their real life, it seems like it means more and it matters and it feels real. It doesn't feel like something we're doing for our teacher, which is where a lot of our things, end up at. They're doing it because we told them to do it. So I think that's awesome. And just the engagement of it. I think that's where we really, really want to go. But what I want to know though, Kelly, when I think about this, like my husband is so in love with this because he's a superhero freak and a comic book freak. What about if you have people that are not like that don't really care about this? Like, what about them? They might look at this and go, this is horrible.
You know, this works across the board. So we do sports. I'm a huge sports fan. I could talk about sports all day long. So we then got this out of the Batman and Superman. And of course, LeBron versus Kobe. That's an argument if you're 5, if you're 15, if you're 25, if you are 85. It doesn't matter. LeBron and Kobe is a huge issue. So we brought LeBron and Kobe in with Toulmin's argument, and it was pretty powerful because it turns out when the students are trying to find evidence and then warrants, the warrant really helped them here, was that they could not prove one was better than the other. So it was really pretty cool because they could see they had all this evidence, but when we made them do so well with the evidence, they couldn't actually prove that one was better than the other. Now we all know LeBron is the best, but sorry, Kobe, not happening. But it was just pretty exciting to see the kids and how it starts clicking in their head. Now, if they're not basketball people, you always have Tom versus Peyton. That's ongoing. I don't know if that's ever going to end. I have bring in all sorts of counter arguments as they're trying to argue one versus the other, but that was also another really cool. And those are easy, quick things. Now, if you wanted to go into, I did this with a math class, which was fascinating because in the state of Georgia, math now has written components on their tests, on their standardized test. So we found articles about Warren Buffett's March Madness Challenge. If you don't know what this is, now for the past 2 years, he did not do it last year. He had to quit. So Warren Buffett offered $1 billion if you got the perfect March Madness tournament bracket.
Wow.
So if you filled out the perfect
out of my realm of understanding. I'm totally interested now.
Get Chris back in here. Okay. Warren Buffett offered $1 billion if you filled out the perfect bracket. Wow. So there were articles about this, lots and lots of articles, and I put them all together in a Google Doc, and I can share that with you. But if you just Google Warren Buffett's, so we found them, and again, remember this is math classes that we're doing this in. So now I'm out of ELA, I'm in math. They actually wrote Mr. Buffett is crazy, and I let them use the word crazy for wagering $1 billion, or he's not crazy. And then they had to find evidence, and they had to find statistics. And so we were able to take Toulmin's argument out of English and put it into math, which they don't often write, but the kids loved it. And if you're any kind of sports person, you still reading your text, you're still analyzing it, we're still annotating it, and now we're writing claim, evidence, and warrant. Warren Buffett is crazy or he isn't crazy based on what they've read. So that was really cool. I mean, it was another great way to experience this outside the world of not Batman superhero. We could bring in sports. You could really bring in just about anything. Yeah. Anything that you're passionate about, that's fun. The idea was that we made it fun. So when we're teaching claim, evidence, and warrant, we're doing it with the simplest of things. Grasp on those ideas. Now we can get to the next level.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. So, okay. So as I said, love that. As a teacher listening to this, I'm like, oh, I want my students to do this. And that's what I tried to do, Kelly, after talking to you. So I went back to my elementary and middle school teachers and I shared all these ideas with them. And what we did was we focused on developing scaffolds, because when a 5th grader hears that they have to analyze a text or annotate a text, it was crazy for them. So we had to come up with some very clear steps that they could follow. And so I'll share some of the things that we did. What you see on your screen right now are some of the things that we did. And we chose to use this because we thought that it would give kids a scaffold and it would make it not so scary. So if you look at the first chart where it says stepping up the evidence, it kind of is a kind of junior version of what Kelly had her kids do. So we had them read the text and they went through it just like she went through her Batman text, and they would read it and they're just reading for information right now. And then we had to tell them literally, think about the inferences, think about the connections, think about the questions you have. And then we get to the annotation part, but we didn't call it annotation. And I can hear you, Kelly, in the background too. I see you over there multitasking.
Okay. Trying to plug in.
So what you want to do is, after we ask them to think about the inferences and ask questions and things like that, we move them to annotation without telling them we move them to annotation. So we ask them to write down, highlight, or underline specific parts of the text that help to explain their thinking and to answer their questions. So as you can see, this is a version of what Kelli was actually doing. And this chart stayed up for a while, and it really helped the kids, and they were able to refer back to that. And before long, they were actually annotating text. And there's nothing cooler than seeing a fifth grader that is annotating text and going through and looking for evidence and questioning and doing all of these different things. It was amazing. If you look at the other side where it says the evidence suitcase, this was something that we just created as a kind of catch-all for the different things that kids should look for. A lot of times with our younger readers, they're not used to looking for evidence, particularly in informational text. So with the chart you see on the right, we had them to go in and we named the kind of things that readers would typically look for, and we put those in our evidence suitcase. So each of those posters that you see there, those were individual things that we talked about when we were looking for evidence to support our claims. So we realized we could look for examples or data, analogies. That was a cool thing for the kids. Looking at anecdotes. Causal relationships. We spent a lot of time with that. A lot of the standards deal very heavily with cause and effect and different things of that nature with the kids. And so having these tools there, it helped them be able to go in and do a lot of the things that the high school students were doing that perhaps they really weren't used to doing at all. So it really gave them a scaffold, it gave them a tool, and it helped them. So I'm going to take the screen off and come back face to face with you. But I want you guys to think about the differences with high school and elementary and middle. It's not that we can't give them rigorous things to do in terms of forming arguments and supporting arguments. The thing is that we need to give them clear scaffolds that can help them so that they won't be confused, they won't be lost, and they'll be able to easily transition into writing these different types of arguments. Kelli, you talked earlier about scaffolds that you use with your kids, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I do want to share a couple other things. You talked about moving it beyond literature. I'm going to share some links that you have really quick. I would love if you would share about the Poe activity that you guys did. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I want to put the links up and then kind of let you take over, but talk a little bit about that. I think it's up. There we go.
Okay, so we've done a lot. We did a lot, obviously, with the scaffolding with the Batman and the sports. And so now we eventually, my principal's going to come into school and he's going to say, all right. So we found these great things about Poe. And the students all have been studying Poe since what? 3rd grade, 4th grade. And so what we found was, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I can hear you.
Okay, let me do some sharing of what we found. So here we have an article about Poe's final days. And this is just to give you some basic information about Poe. This is just talks about the last couple of days of his life. There's nothing, it doesn't try to prove anything. It's just information about how he died, what was happening. So the kids just can kind of get a little bit of background knowledge. From there, kids read, they annotate. We talk about this in class. We've talked about Poe. And you can do this again at any grade level because we're just talking about the basic claim, evidence, and warrant from Toulmin. After that, we found an article from the New York Times written by a doctor, Michael Benzites, I don't know how to say, Benitez. And he wrote that he did not die a drunk, but he dies of rabies. So then he goes on and he tries to prove his argument for how he's died of rabies. Again, the New York Times and this series is that somebody countered him and actually talked, like wrote a letter to the editor countering this whole situation. So these people, my computer is starting to freeze, there we go. These people have said, no, he did not die of rabies. He in fact died of alcoholism, and here's the support for this. So it's kind of cool that here you're seeing a counter in writing, and it's New York Times. So the students really kind of get excited about this, that they're seeing these people have like arguments, real world, 1996. So it's about 20 years old, but to us, it's not 20 years old. Then we're going to go one step further. The doctor, no, oh, I opened, there we go. The doctor writes
another rebuttal. So now you've got multiple rebuttals, which is fabulous, all about the same thing. And he's like, nope, I'm going to stick with my rabies thing. So the kids can see a counter and a counter and a counter. We're talking about literature, because we're talking about Edgar Allan Poe, and they're actually able to not only form their own opinions on how he died based on these 4 text writings, but they can also, again, like what we talked about before, is they're become better consumers. They can recognize, okay, this guy had a great argument because of these reasons. And
That's
if you wanted to, instead of just having them come up with their own, you could also say, okay, which one do you mostly agree with and why? Who has the best claim, evidence, and warrant?
Yeah, I like that.
We talk about this. So what we've talked about, Roz, you and I mostly, is just how to get students to write. But let's turn this around. This makes students better consumers. Let me stop sharing and talk to you for a minute. I'm coming right back. Okay, this makes our students better consumers as well. And so I really believe we do an analysis of advertising. So you can look at advertisements. Shoot, the next day after Super Bowl, what a great day. Bring in your favorite commercials. Okay, what are they claiming? What's their evidence? Where are their warrants? Do they have it? So this also makes us really good consumers. So not only the Poe's articles, any of the articles, editorials that we've read, what's their claim? What is this person trying to prove? Do they have a warrant? Is there a so what with their evidence? And then take this out to make them consumers. So we're not just talking about level of writing.
Yeah. What I like about that, Kelly, is that you're taking a skill that often we isolate to one particular subject, but the kids are able to see how this is useful across multiple content areas and in real life. When you mentioned the advertisement, those are things that they can use in their regular life. We can use those same skills to say, hey, is there any evidence that backs this up? And I think that's what's most powerful about this. You're using the Superman, the Batman to get the kids excited about it, but these are skills that they can use across multiple content areas. And I think that's what's really powerful. And that's what I tried to take away really from you and what you did. And so I love that. I love that it can be used in math, your math examples, literature. And I think as teachers, that's what we want to do. We want to create kids who have these critical thinking skills and things that they can apply to life, not just our subject in our class. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I totally agree. Oh, sorry. I just started talking over you. No, I absolutely agree. And that's what I think when you've talked so much about scaffolding in elementary, and I scaffold everything in high school. We just scaffold differently. We scaffold from learning how to do this with really easy text to taking it to really difficult text. So by the end of the semester, you can read George Orwell's Politics of the English Language and have these kids really analyze it. What's his claim? Where's his evidence? His rebuttals? And the kids, so that's a difficult text for kids to read, but after annotating and having a close reading with it, they're able to then take these things that they've learned with the most basic things, and we can kick it up a notch.
And apply it. I love that. I love that.
We've really built them up, and then they can come in, and I have students often that go, oh my gosh, I can't read anything now without you in my head.
Oh, I love, that's the best compliment ever.
That's the best compliment. So again, why we start with really fun stuff, the Batman, the Tom and Brady, Tom versus Peyton, the simple things that kids are still crazy passionate about, you then build it throughout your semester, throughout year, whatever it is that you have, until you get to the really hard stuff. And by then,
we try to do that with elementary. Oh, I'm sorry, I talked over you. Go ahead.
No. I'm just saying, by then it's not really hard because they're really confident and they've done it so much that they're like, oh, I got this.
Definitely. And I think that's what we took away from you. One of the things I'm going to share is what we did when we kind of followed that same line of thinking. And so with elementary, once they had that skill, we started applying it to other things. Instead of you just writing an argument about a text I gave you or about something that you think is cool, we started looking at the books that we were reading in our classes and we started dissecting them. And of course, we always use charts with the little ones, and we would look at the books that we were reading and say, okay, what is this book about? What kind of problems do we see? What kind of setting? We deconstruct the book, and then we come up with arguments. A lot of times they had things, whether a book was more appropriate or whether another book was more appropriate for students in their grade level. I'm going to share a chart that we made with that called Book Face Off. The chart that you should see on your screen is one we did, which I loved. We had the little faces there, and every time we had a book by the same author, sometimes or different authors, we would dissect the book. What is it about? And then we would make arguments for whether this book was really well suited for students in our class or certain grade levels. And the students loved it, and they were able to analyze because of the scaffolds that were there earlier. Another one here, this is example one we did with third graders. We were reading Sarah Plain and Tall and Skylark, which are both written by the same author. So we went through and we broke the book down just so we knew what was going on. We talked about the themes, we talked about the basic things you look for in books, and then we made an argument about which one of these books was really better, which book was more enjoyable, which book had, you know, the most resonance with their readers. And students were able to really get into this, and they understood exactly what was going on. They understood how to analyze it because of the work we did early on, following some of the work from Kelli. And then the last one I'm going to show you, we talked about supporting arguments. And this was really cool to me because we have been talking about writing arguments, but students were able to use this to not only write an argument, but to analyze the argument that other people made. So in this chart, we had a book that we read that was about politics in colonial America. And what the students did, they went through and they tried to figure out what are the major claims that the author is making. And once we had those major claims, I had them go in and figure out what kind of support is the author using. We took those same things that we use for writing arguments, and we use those to investigate and analyze arguments. So that was really powerful, and that's really how we ended our year. And we knew that our students understood it because they not only were able to write arguments, but they were able to look at text and decide how strong an author's argument was. So this is really powerful, and it was just nice to see how this same skill set could be used from third graders all the way up to 12th graders. And it really made us feel really good and strong because we were meeting the rigor of the Common Core standards, but we were able to differentiate it for the grade levels that we taught. So that's really our takeaway from all of this. Let me come back to you guys, take it off a screen share. But we really enjoyed working with our kids with this, and more than anything, at least for me, Kelli, was that the kids were able to take this and internalize it. They started using it for other things in regular life, like we talked about with the commercials. So this is really powerful. It started with Batman versus Superman, but it really had a long-term effect on our students across content areas. And I think I have it off there. There we go. All right, so we're kind of wrapping up near the end. Kelli, you want to add anything else? I feel like I kind of said everything I took away from it.
My computer just freaked out, so thank you for talking through all of that. Thank God for backup. Don't
Yes.
look at me right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
No, you're okay. It wasn't even noticed. We were totally on screen share.
This has been such a really cool experience. Thank you. And Annie, I love to talk about what's happening in classrooms and what cool things we're doing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of cutting out a little bit, but I can hear you.
Okay. So this has just been a great experience, and I look forward to more EdCo Labs, and I can't wait to get on and see what the tweets are all saying. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out. And as always, contact us. Roz, I think you got a contact screen up there. Please email us anything you need. We'd love to help.
All right, thanks, guys. Hey, Lauren, it's back to you. I think you're still on mute, but we're all done. We put our contact information.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Thank you both, Roz and Kelli, and for teaching us that Toulmin's argument can be used with really anything and anywhere from K-12. So there's a lot of great ideas that you shared, and I know Twitter was really excited about it. Those of you that are watching, if you missed any portion of this or any of our other sessions, everything will be archived on the website. We'd love for you to stick around for the closing session where the International Literacy Association will be giving a presentation on young educators that are changing the world. It's a conversation with ILA's 30 under 30 honorees. So thanks again, and we'll see you there.